Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of CVP's YouTube channel. Thanks so much for tuning in this afternoon. I think we're in episode 8 now of Still Rolling, which is kind of an amalgamation of a podcast and this visual thing going on here. So again, thanks very much for tuning in. We've got Louis. Right, come on, Louis. What's your surname?
Louis Houiller.
Yeah. Every time I've tried to promote this week, I've been like, Louis who?
Man, it gets pronounced wrong so many times.
It's thrown me every time. I'm sorry, I can only apologize.
Don't worry about it. No, get it all the time.
You taking my apology? I appreciate it. So we are live this week. We're back live. Last week was a pre-record with Jax Harney because people are busy and we're really grateful for their time. But Louis is kind enough to give us his time this week. So we're actually live. At certain points in time, you guys can ask questions about what we're talking about. We'll totally field them for you. But for the most part, we're going to get into all things FPV. So FPV I think it found its way onto my radar. When was it? I think it was probably to do with when the racing drones and stuff came out. And I was kind of taken with drones anyway. I mean, we'll get into my history with drones because I told you a little bit yesterday about my anxiety associated
you had a lot
and filming and stuff. But moving on to FPVs, when the racing drones started coming out, I kind of became aware that things were moving a bit more dynamically. It wasn't sort of the necessary cinematic shots that I had become synonymous with drone filming, like I guess trying to take things from helicopters and that sort of style of filming and find a more condensed way of doing it. Whether it be cheaper or there's stuff where you can't do with helicopters, places you can't fly with helicopters. Suddenly drones started taking over, and then, I mean, look, FPV is, I mean, you're in a better place to tell me, dude. FPV is like exploded, right, in the last couple of years?
It definitely has, yeah. So I think FPV started around 2014. That was when it was kind of kicking off. Right. Although beforehand, there were certain electronics that could get you in the air. 2014 was kind of like the start. And then around 2017, 2018 was when you started to see the explosion of FPV videos, namely because Johnny Shear, I don't know how you say his surname, mainly because of his and Mr. Steele's videos, they just went viral. They popped off. And so more and more people wanted to get into it. And because there's such a steep learning curve with FPV, you're seeing the explosion of videos right now because it takes a year, a few months to actually get good.
Yeah, that's like I guess the most important element from my perspective. And certainly something that I'd love to bring to the audience of CVP is kind of understanding that this isn't a gimmick or a fad. It's not, I mean, I don't want to shit on gimbals and drones when they first came out, but you know what I'm saying? Like the reality is, it's like there's an element here where it's like, if your shot isn't motivating your story, and what's it doing? If you're just using a tool for the sake of using the tool, it's, it becomes negated. And obviously, you can overdo it. You do too many shots of the same thing and it becomes overplayed. But it's also the critical bit is it's not serving the purpose of telling the story. Whereas when I first saw FPV, I kind of didn't really, I just thought, I saw the racing drones, I didn't quite get it. And now I'm seeing these really incredibly cinematic images. Yeah, they coined the term cinematic images, but something with some dynamic to it that's actually encouraging some element of not necessarily storytelling, but it's like bringing something else to the table. Creative. And there's people like yourself, obviously, that are getting involved with FPV, are taking it seriously because, like you said, it's a steep learning curve. You can't pick this thing up and just get going with it. And I guess this is the main thing that we're getting into is that Louis yesterday was very kind in letting me have a go with his FPV drone because I've become fascinated with this sort of stuff. And I was keen to show everyone, like, right, from a complete beginner, I've flown some Mavic 2s, DJI Mavic stuff, but I haven't flown anything like this FPV drone. So Louis was kind enough yesterday to let me have a go. I did try and convince him to send me the drone to start with so I could have a play with it in like the comfort of my own home and location. So if I embarrassed myself too heavily, the cost wasn't too high. But Louis was kind enough to go out with us yesterday. So, I mean, first of all, how do I do? Firstly, come on.
You did good, man. I mean, I remember you saying that it was going to be hard. And I remember me saying that you were going to crash in the first 20 seconds, remember? But you I mean, I'm sure you'll see the clip. Everyone will see the clip in a sec. Like, you actually did a full 4 minutes. You know, obviously I had to do the landing, which was fine.
Oh, I'm not sure if like time slowed down or sped up for me in that situation. But let's go through the learning curve as well, because ultimately there was part one of this is you said, right, jump on the simulator.
Yeah. So when we got there, I brought the simulator and I just made you get used to the muscle memory of the sticks, because obviously the sticks with FPV are completely different to normal drones. It's an entirely different dynamic in that there's 4 controls. You have throttle, you have pitch, yaw, and roll. Whereas the Mavics, it's the same, but it's very stabilized, obviously with the GPS, with the sensors and everything. So
yeah, I guess the main thing that sort of struck me about that immediately, actually, we got the wonderful Jake back with us as well, because we're live this week. So he's in the background doing the tech stuff for us and looking after us. Jake, if you wouldn't mind playing the simulator clip, then the audience will get an idea for what that actually looks like in the simulator world, so you can get an idea of what the training of this might look like. So as you can see here, this is what training wheels look like in FPV world. You know, this was completely new to me. I played some video games in my time, but there's a long time ago, you know, and I would say that was my immediate thought. Like, bear in mind, this is Louis flying here. We didn't actually screen record my one. No, it's very important and very important to clear up that this is not me flying right now. This is Louis showing up inside the simulator, so we could get a screen record and help you guys get a visual of what.
It's like an hour ago.
But as you can see, there's gates and things that you can maneuver in and out of, and you know, help to understand the proximity. But this is the virtual world. You know, when I jumped on this, as Louis just said, the reality is these joysticks are not doing the same things that I'm anticipating them to do. So from memory, left stick is acceleration control, or at least motor control. So you're increasing accelerator, yeah? Is that correct?
Yeah.
And at that point in time, the thing takes off and it just wants to run away at that point. So my experience from drones with GPS is that once it's in the air, you hit takeoff, it takes off, and then it kind of floats, it's hovering.
Yeah.
Whereas with me in this, as soon as you hit that, you're going, and it requires that lift to stay in the air. So you can't just turn it off as it will fall out of the air. Yeah. And as I said, this is like a very, very kind rendition of a simulator, or what that looks like. So
it's a complicated piece of tech, but I mean, obviously the pilots who want to get into FPV, they start the sim first and they spend a good minimum 8 hours learning it, getting that muscle memory in the thumbs. Yeah. There's 2 types of ways to do FPV. There's the thumbs, which are like Xbox, PS4s,
right?
Or you have the pinchers, which use your index finger and the thumb. It's just entirely down to preference. I know some people do thumbs. I know some people do pinchers. I am myself a thumb. As I said, like I do video games and everything, so it's just natural.
Yeah, that's the thing. But I guess what you're saying here as well is that muscle memory. The thing about that, we'll have a look at my maiden voyage, which is the Josh takeoff. And then
love it.
There you go. So you can see the control in my hand there. Yep. And then this is me basically getting to grips with having the goggles on my face, which was one, alien part of it. So you've got like the goggles on the face, which are completely obstructing your view. You can only see the analog signal, which we'll get to in a second. And then it's like, right, cool, we're in. And then it just takes off.
There we go. Good stuff. You just go straight for ages.
Go straight. It just disappears. And then we'll go, Jake, if we go to Josh's flight as well, we'll be able to see what that looks like. So that's the analog view there. So that's all I'm seeing in my eyes. And I'm controlling over this interface. And this is doing me a lot of favors here, to be fair. This looks pretty stable so far.
But yeah, it's your first flight. It's good. It's very good. Good.
And then we'll move on to analog degradation as well, because like this is actually a demonstration of what we're talking about in a second. But this is just the clip title for Jake, so he can play it. So this is actually my flight continued. Now it shows really what's happening. Louis, talk us through what's happening here.
So this is your first ever flight. Obviously, your balance is a bit all over the place. But you've got it. I mean, you're not crashing, which is good. Whenever you go a bit too over extreme, you correct it somewhat. As you can see, there's a bit of static that comes with the analog feed. I mean, we'll talk about later about analog versus digital.
But the critical bit is like, that is me. I'm trying my hardest to get that in the right place. And as something changes, I'm then putting an input on the controller, which is then dictating where it ends up. So I'm like strafing left and then I'm tipping up because I'm sort of like finding what's happening. Now, I like to think that, well, I don't like to think, I know that at this point in time, there's a bit of instinct kicking in, which is helping me through this situation. Like just keeping, like enough to keep me in the air. And obviously you were kind enough to sort of, you know, whisper some guidance into my ear at this point and go, up, just keep it, just go higher.
Don't crash into these people.
There's boats over here and some of that. It's actually quite funny as well, because that leads us on to the story of yesterday as well. We thought we'd go to this complete isolated location.
No.
I realize we're getting through this quite quickly because we're actually realizing there's a lot more to this story quite quickly, because I'm sure a lot of people are going to recognize this location quite quickly. And we did get ourselves into a spot of bother yesterday. So whilst this was absolutely my fault, I put hands up to this situation. In my mind and in my eyes, there's a situation where we've got drones in recreational worlds and we've got drones in professional world, right? So I was like, right, cool, Louis, where can we go and do this safely? We'll go to the most abandoned part of the country, which is, as far as I knew, the UK's, I think it's the UK's only desert. Do you know that?
I didn't know that. Is that true?
Wikipedia says it's true. It must be.
Damn. I did geography and I didn't know that.
I thought we'll go to somewhere it's completely isolated. We've got plenty of room to run around. I can make mistakes. Louis was kind of to remind me as well that in this situation, I'm allowed to crash. Don't worry about crashing. Yeah. Even though I was pretty stressed out about it because I didn't want to crash his drones or wreck anything. We actually find ourselves in Dungeness. And then I just completed this flight. We'd so far lasted 4 minutes.
Yeah.
And then a lovely gentleman named Owen came and said hello to us, didn't he?
Oh, lovely Owen.
Lovely Owen. So for any of you thinking about going down to Dungeness to do some filming, you will require a permit, a risk assessment, and also an authority to actually go and film at this location. Now, as far as I understood, those were absolutely things that we would require on a professional shoot, but this was us just going to have some fun.
Just some fun.
I was wrong. I hold my hands up. I think this is probably the best place to start with this conversation, because we've actually worked.
Yeah, he was nice enough, but then obviously he said that if we weren't going to leave, the armed police would come.
Oh yeah, I forgot that little bit.
Yeah,
that bit is important.
But I mean, we left them.
We were polite. We were absolutely respectful of the situation that we were in, and we understood very quickly that we weren't welcome, even though we assumed that being on essentially a beach in the middle of nowhere, we'd be okay, but that wasn't simply the case.
But look, you got your maiden voyage, so
we got the maiden voyage.
Yeah.
So what we did then is we moved on to another location. Actually, I know we're darting a bit about it, but let's stick with this conversation for a second. Let's stick with the conversation about permissions, because ultimately we did find a location which we were suitable to use. But if you're learning to use FPV, now we touched on the simulator, obviously that's one way of utilizing you know, the existing materials you have, and all you need is a laptop. So yeah, you've got your laptop, you've got your controller, and you can practice. But if you want to go to a location and actually do this efficiently, how do you even start with that? I mean, granted, of course, I'm sure when you first started playing around with drones, you weren't going to be licensed immediately. What's the situation?
So, I mean, when you first start droning, you need to get yourself in a big open space with nothing around you, maybe just a big field. So if you crash, you know where it is. There's no objects to hit. There's no safety concerns. That's for the best bet in how to fly. And then obviously, if you are looking to go as a straight path in a career, you want to get your license in droning, and you want to get a PFCO, you want to get insurance, liability, all these kind of stuff.
What's all this? It sounds French to me.
Sorry?
What's all this stuff? What are we talking about? You need your license.
You need your license, you need your ops manual. So your ops manual is everything included, your regs, what your drone weighs, what kind of drone it is.
So we're starting to get an understanding of what this actually means, aren't we? Like just how much is involved in this procedure. We talk about this learning curve. It's not just about an understanding, how much is involved with simply flying this thing.
Yeah.
But ultimately making sure you're legal and you're safe as well, right?
That's it's a big commitment. It is.
Yeah, we didn't discard that yesterday in that you know, we didn't disregard that yesterday. We didn't say, you know, we're going to go and just be obnoxious and just kind of fly this wherever we please. We made sure the coast was clear, and we thought we'd done enough. And in my eyes, recreationally versus professionally, that was enough. But obviously, it wasn't. So I guess there's some diligence as well in terms of like where your big field is. Is there no fly zones? Is there sort of stuff? There's some diligence we could have done beforehand, right?
For sure, yeah. But
I guess, you know, that's that's certainly the message we're trying to communicate here to these kind of folks. I mean, from your perspective with these locations, was there any? Ultimately, it was a few years ago now. So, what was that simply the way you didn't sort of?
It's a lot of it is, I mean, trial and error, but that's before you get your license. Whenever you get your license, because bearing in mind the license takes 3 days. That's how long it takes to get your drone license. It's the same as a car test. You have to do a theory and then you do a practical, and after that, you know everything. You have your manual and you can show your clients your license, your certificates, and everything.
3 days doesn't sound like a lot of time. Like how prepared? Like how tough is it? Straight up.
Well, bearing in mind, I did it 3.5 years ago.
Yeah.
So I think it's changed a bit, but there is quite a lot of there's a lot of theory to know.
Right.
Just, you know, wind speed, places to fly, airspace, all that kind of stuff. And then you have the practical, which is that. So in the actual drone license itself, you don't get taught any FPV. It's all, you know, the DJI, Mavic, Phantoms, Inspires, all that kind of stuff. And then after you get your license, you realize that FPV is included in your license, but you don't get taught it, at least from my perspective anyway. I don't know nowadays, though, they may get taught FPV. I'm not too sure.
I guess it'd be good to know for anyone going to the license now if that's changed, because that feels like a pretty fundamental point. Because for me, obviously, the FPV drone was, well, not only a little bit harder, it was 100% harder. And the risk is increased 100% as well. You know, the Mavic, you know, will ultimately fly itself if you're careful with it. You know, it takes off by itself. GPS keeps it in the same sort of place. We actually did take my Mavic out yesterday as well, so we'll do some comparisons with that in a bit as well to show sort of like the different style choices. But certainly from my perspective, it was like, right, Mavic goes up, flies itself, and then you're just kind of controlling.
It's very easy.
Yeah, and from my perspective, I very much enjoyed that because I'm able to control the shot. You know, I'm looking for a very linear way of controlling my shot. I'm really thinking about the smoothest way I can control the camera. Rather than I'm thinking about flying a drone. And obviously there's like, you know, there are absolutely experts within this world. I got some incredible friends that do like amazing things with dual operators, with crazy setups, you know, big payload setups and stuff like that, where they've got 2 controllers. So one person's physically in charge of flying the actual, device, drone, whatever you call it. And then someone who's obviously then physically just controlling the camera, and that's definitely going to be the best scenario. But that's what's striking me about this FPV stuff is like, it seems to me that now we're in a position where ultimately you can do both, and you're not having to communicate between 2 people, and like ultimately the better shot you're going to get is how well those 2 people can communicate. You're able to take control of the drone and the shot as well.
So with DJI, obviously you're controlling the drone, that's very automated, but you're controlling the camera at the same time, right? Whereas with FPV, you have to control the drone manually the whole time, but the camera is fixed. You can't change any of the settings.
Right.
It's full-on control of how the drone moves. Whereas with the DJI, it's half and half.
All right. So I guess it's a good place to start. Where those major differences are. So camera, obviously, this is the requirement of this tool. That's the point of the tool is to film, right? So what camera are you rolling on the top of your? So have you got one of your drones there? I should have told you prepared.
Yeah, no, actually, you know what? I have.
Ah, look at this guy. He's prepared.
There we go.
There you go. So that's the drone. That's one of the ones that in your fleet. I think you've got like 5 of them. He was kind enough to let me fly. 7. He was kind enough to let me fly one of the ones that didn't mean as much to him.
I don't like it.
But let's have a look at that drone again. So what camera are you rolling on there?
So this is the GoPro Hero 6.
Yep.
The ones that all my fleet hold are the Hero 6 and the Hero 8. All GoPros.
Why 6? Why 8?
So they can run the 7 or the 5, any of the GoPros, but the reason that the 6 and the 8 work, and most people use them is because of the software stabilization called Real Steady.
Right.
So the way that the videos look, how they look, is via the software that make it look as stable as possible. It's incredible how like stable the footage comes out through this software. And the 6s and the 8s are only the ones that are capable of using this software.
For those of the audience that didn't see some of the promo we put out in the last few days, we'll roll on some of Louis' clips actually. Jake, find it's all right. We'll just show you the one we yesterday because we went to the second location as well.
Oh yeah.
We'll just show that off because it is. Let me just double check which clip name it is. We'll go FPV style shot. Is the clip name, please, Jake. But this is a shot from yesterday when we got moved on.
What was it? Sorry, which one?
FPV style shot is the clip name. There you go. So this is actually Louis in all his glory yesterday. Just a practice day. This is the second location we found ourselves in where we were actually okay to be in. And this is the kind of thing that we're talking about.
Yeah.
So obviously there's a number of things we'll talk about within this shot, but initially the stabilization. So you're telling me that not only this isn't coming out of the camera like this.
The camera is not coming out. No, it's not. There is some slight wobbles. There is very sharp edges in the turning. So when I turn in this video, it's a lot sharper than it looks. Right now, it looks very smooth, like dreamy kind of style. You know, it's
incredible. Straight
no
away,
sharp edges. Sorry,
straight away I was blown away by this. Like you're saying about that dreamy sort of floatiness to it. It's like,
yeah, so it's a smooth, floaty kind of feel, and that's what the software brings out. Whereas when you're flying and when the GoPro records it and you put it in the computer, it's very sharp, it's very fast. It's not as floaty or dreamy, but the software brings it into it, and it takes out all the sharp edges, all the sharp turns and everything, and it just makes it look like that.
Gotcha. Before our audience get motion sickness, let's put them onto the side by side as well. So you'll get to see the analog picture in picture here.
Yeah, so you'll see in the analog, you'll see some sharp edges when I turn.
Let's go for side by side. There we go. Exactly. So I'm marginally covering that up at the moment, but you can see in the bottom right. Oh, it's going to move us for us. There we go. Look at that. So you can see there the difference in the analog feed, right? So this is the camera that you're piloting through, because obviously you're not getting a streamed view of the GoPro. You're getting an FPV view from the camera and the drone, right?
Yep. So the little camera inside here by the drone underneath the GoPro is what transmits the signal from this antenna to the goggles, and that's how you view what the drone sees.
This is incredibly technical. I realize now how much is simply going on in this tiny drone that has enabled you to get what's going on here. And so again,
so just to give a bit of a rundown,
yeah,
the angle of the drone camera is parallel to the GoPro. So basically how you see is what the GoPro will see. Yeah. Whereas these are people fly and their camera angle is 30 degrees, but their GoPro is 20 degrees. And obviously they think the GoPro is viewing what they view, but it's not.
Yeah.
So.
And obviously that's dictated by the speed as well, right?
Exactly.
So you're going faster or slower, and that changes on the pitch because obviously the thing's taking off and moving forward, right?
Yeah. So races will have it super, if you can see that, super high.
Yeah.
Or some people will prefer more of a slow cinematic look, and they'll bring it down, the FPV camera down, so it'll just be a lower pitch.
And this does get us nicely onto. So now we've got that picture in picture. Now we can see the analog feed coming through there. So straight up, question time: analog versus digital. Why are we not getting a digital feed there? We've been in digital world for, I don't even know, 20, 30 years now.
Man, this conversation could last 4 hours.
Well, let's try. Make
Okay.
it simple for me. Come on, break it down for me.
Okay, so digital is super new, very new, whereas analog has been in the world for decades, and the FPV world has known analog its whole life.
Okay.
The reason that I'm running analog right now is because when I first started FPV, digital wasn't out. I started in mid 2018.
Yeah. And
digital FPV started middle 2019, end of 2019.
Right.
So it's very new, and it's man, there's so many things.
Let's start with the conversation we had yesterday then. So the main thing that struck me as the most obvious point was the latency. So it's the latency is like the linear degradation.
Linear decay, yeah. So it's you kind of have to think that analog is a frequency, right? You have to think of analog as a rubber band, and analog is in FPV we use 5.8 frequency,
right?
And you got to think of it as a rubber band, and 5.8 being unstretched band, 2.4 is another frequency, and that's mid-stretch.
I love the way you've gone super technical with me here. I was like, break it down for me. It was super easy, mate. The decay bit, when you said it to me yesterday, made perfect sense because it's very simple. The further this thing gets away from you.
Yeah. There's linear degradation. Yeah, okay. So with analog, there is a linear degradation with static when you're going to lose signal. Whereas with digital, it's fully abrupt.
So we're seeing the picture start to break up the further it gets away. We get a little few moments of that where the picture starts to break up as well, right? So you're telling me that in digital world, when that starts to go, you don't get the on and off. It just goes.
It just goes, exactly.
Yeah. Right. So obviously, if you're trying to navigate a tight space or trying to navigate really anywhere, that's what we're trying. Again, point proven here. It's incredible how close you can get to these objects with this amount of control. It's incredible. But if you didn't have that ability, or you were concerned that the picture's going to drop out, there's no way you can have faith in that, right?
No, it's a big talking point with digital versus analog, and there's sort of a reason why the top tier professionals and the pilots aren't using digital right now.
Interesting.
Because of the latency and just how new it is, and they're not 100% trusted with it, whereas analog is tried and true with how reliable it is.
I realized my latency question there was a bit premature because the latency actually refers to how quickly the image is refreshing, right?
That's it. Yeah. So
if it's behind and you're going to run into something, you'll have run into it by the time your image gets to you, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's it. That's analog. I mean, it's super fast. It's instant. Whereas there are times with digital that it delays. And obviously with a delay in FPV, you can't have that because it's instant. It's real time. You're going 60, 80 miles an hour.
Yeah. Jake, we'll save the audience from the motion sickness as well. So we'll go back to us, guys. It's a very prevalent part of the conversation because in my mind, I wasn't even aware of that part of the conversation, that degradation that means your image gets lost over a period of time. Of course.
So I mean, there's a reason that all comms worldwide use analog. They use an analog domain. And that's because of the distance and reliability. Like digital is nice, it's clear, it's beautiful, but it will never outperform analog. I mean, it's too easy to break down. Digital requires
We're talking about reliability now, right?
I'm talking about reliability, yeah, and distance. Digital requires a two-way comms. It needs a start point and an end point. That's why it's a fully abrupt end. Whereas with analog, it's just a slow degradation. And there's a chance for you, if it does degrade, for you to come back because you know where you are. So you just turn around and you come back home.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I saw in the goggles yesterday, it's like, start to look like a VHS videotape disappearing from my eye.
That's it. Yeah.
And then it started to go dark. And I was like, I'm probably a bit too far away now.
Yeah. I mean, as you know, the image is a bit, it's a bit bad. It looks 1950s television. And you can't see everything in all its glory, which you can do with digital. You can see branches, you can see rocks, singular rock. It's amazing. Yeah.
I was about to say that presents another challenge, especially if you're navigating, tight spots and that sort of thing.
Oh, exactly.
Tree branches or whatever else in the way.
Yeah, which sort of leads to the point with it's very circumstantial with what system you want to use.
Mm-hmm.
One is looking to go really long range, 10 miles out, 5 miles out. Then
10 miles.
Analog.
10 miles?
Yeah.
What? That doesn't... It honestly seems ridiculous to me that anything, like you could use any tool. Are there any applications of that, or is that just theoretical?
No, there are definitely applications for that.
Right.
I mean, not necessarily an FPV drone, but you could definitely use an FPV wing. That would go that far.
Now we're talking about like Secret Service type stuff.
Yeah, no. I'm still fully wing scale type aircraft. They're made of this special material, and they look like a plane, like a glider, and they can go that far.
Interesting. So, I mean, I feel like there's got to be some questions about those different things coming up, but I think we'll allow the audience to pitch in with that rather than me try trying to think about too much. What are these things? What is your base setup cost? When you first got into this, I mean, obviously, I'm sure you were thinking, right, I'm probably going to crash this the first time I fly it. So you weren't necessarily looking to make the biggest investment. But
yeah.
What's the first setup cost? How do you get into this?
Oh, okay. It's really dependent. You'd have to research a lot if you wanted to go on the analog route or the digital route.
Right. So let's say I want, like, right now, technology available now, not when you started. What am I doing? Where am I going? Am I going to go, is that
simulator first, then controller? Those are the two things off the bat.
Right. So simulator to get ourselves to a point where we're actually.
Yeah. So because this is a big hobby that you're investing into. If you just buy a simulator controller, that's what, only £140. That's it. Because the simulator
It's no small amount of money. At the end of the day, it's essentially an advanced computer game at that stage, isn't it?
That's true, yeah, but it's not like a full-on set. Which, if you were to buy £1,000 worth of the whole kit and you end up being like, okay, this isn't for me anymore, that's a lot of money that you've maybe wasted.
This is what I'm getting into. Is like, ultimately, what do those sort of steps look like? In camera world, you can go and get sort of a digital SLR that can do video and some lenses comparatively cheap, but then it's all scalable. You can get very, very carried away very, very quickly.
Oh yeah.
So I guess in this world, that's kind of where I'm at. It's like, what's, in this day and age, are we going with once we've done our simulator, we're happy that we're going to make our investment. Is the DJI do like a package that's like a take home thing, or do you recommend something else? What sort of prices are we looking at for a starter pack?
For a starter, it's definitely dependent on the system you go for. Again, I mean, it's analog is surprisingly somewhat more expensive than digital if you were to get everything premium, everything. And I would strongly recommend that if you were to go into the FPV world in analog, try and buy the highest level of what you can afford.
Yeah.
But because you ultimately get the best parts with the best reliability, and you'll also get the whole community behind you because they know they've bought it as well. And you will run into problems.
FPV already, right?
Sorry?
There's a strong community of FPV already, right?
Mega strong. And that's another talking point of digital versus analog, because there's not many in digital so far. So if you have a problem, there's not many people you can talk to about. Whereas with analog, it's a million. You can go on Facebook. There's tons of Facebook groups about these problems with analog, and you'll have an answer, a resolution in minutes.
Well, that's good to know that there's like a little somewhat support group, when you're getting into this, because I know that was definitely, like I said, man, when I saw this to start with, I was blown away by the quality of the footage first and foremost. In my head, it was like, right, GoPros, nothing wrong with them, but when I'm looking at somewhat of a situation where I'm going to incorporate this in a cinematic world, maybe in a film I'm working on, or anything really, whether it be commercial or otherwise, that's going to be a sticking point. They're great cameras, but they're not necessarily, giving me something that I can grade particularly easily. They're not going to give me something.
Yeah,
I'm trying to think of the things.
So yeah, GoPros are definitely I would say a limitation with FPV, just because it's a GoPro. It's an action camera. That's what its roots are.
Yeah.
And the sensor is what, an inch? Not even that.
Yeah, it's teeny. Like, you can't change lenses. You're not controlling the f-stop, manual control. I mean, what manual control do you even have on them these days? Like,
you have shutter, white balance, ISO, and that's it.
At least you can set those so they're not going to be changing on you. That's something. And I guess that's probably the jump when I started seeing this FPV stuff taking hold on things. I was like, hold on a minute. I'm waiting for the exposure to dramatically change as it looks highlight and comes back down to something. You mentioned Johnny FPV earlier.
We're definitely seeing the rise in people not using GoPros.
Right.
So I'm going to say this year and next year, there's going to be more frames and more brands building a frame that require a cinema camera like a GH5, Blackmagic, or a Red.
Interesting. So, like, what's our weight capacity at the moment, and like, what's the things that are holding it back? The battery life, is it what?
There's many things. The whole weight of the frame itself, the size of the frame, the batteries as well. Because right now these are 5-inch frames. The arms are 5-inch and the props are 5-inch, and this will no way in hell carry a cinema camera. It's just too small. The motors will burn out in an instant.
But you're telling me that this is theoretically possible, or it's actually happening, like the next step in this evolution?
Like there are frames available right now to buy which can carry cinema cameras, but there's very few.
Yeah, because one of the things I saw, I mean, we had a minor conversation about this when I was out in the States at the end of last year. I was like, that's an FPV drone, because it was flying completely differently. It wasn't holding its position in the air.
Yeah.
It was like diving.
That's it.
And then I realized I was lucky enough to meet this gentleman, Johnny.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm pretty sure I just saw a cinema camera flying through the air. And not only was that pretty concerning, but like also quite exciting. I was like, hold on a minute. The potential shot implications of flying a cinema camera where I can control the lens, and we've got lens control, we've got camera control, and we've got a good codec behind it. We've got RAW or whatever. I'm like, where does this end? And I later found out, I think it was a Monstro. Was that correct? It was a Monstro they had?
I think, yeah, it was a Monstro. Yeah, it was.
Which is insane. Like, it's not a heavy camera.
Crazy.
It's not GoPro, No. And it's like, it's flying dynamically through the air. I mean, it sounded pretty dangerous, if I'm honest with you. I was like,
I tell you, like Johnny, I give credit to Johnny for flying that, because the amount of stress flying that amount of money worth on a drone, an FPV drone, is crazy.
Well, that's quite funny, because I saw you crash very, very small.
I mean, come on, it's a GoPro on a 5-inch frame. It's not like
a funny thing, of course. But that's like, I see you pick up your GoPro, like, the screen smashed. And it's like, it just didn't care. It's like, it's happened so many times. The first time it was probably stressful, but beyond that, it's like, whereas if you send a cinema camera into the ground,
it's done. I mean, it's just because GoPros, they're A, cheap, and they're B, tiny. And obviously the smaller the FPV drone, the more dynamic shots you can get.
What about this new camera from Red?
Komodo.
Come on, thought about it.
I have thought about it, but I mean, it's not on the public sale right now, is it?
From what I understand, Mr. Jared Land, who is the CEO, owner of the company, is very specifically putting out a handful of the first units. I think they're just getting back into production, obviously, after what the current situation's been going on. And then I believe they're on general sale. They do a Stormtrooper version, which is like the next stage of production, and then until they do general release. So I believe that point is probably July, August time. I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth though.
Yeah.
August, maybe September. I don't know. I don't know how readily available they are. I think you can put your money down now and you can email them directly and get one. Okay. But I don't know lead times and stuff. So it's obviously brand new technology, but the camera weighs like 1 kilogram. We figured out, right?
Well, I mean, I am definitely interested, but I would just need to find a frame that would suit it optimally, because there's tons of frames out here in the 5-inch world that are made really badly, and the frame flies like that. It's really juddery. It's not smooth. The frame needs to be precise, and it needs to have a lot of work into it before you put a camera on it. Right. I want it to be anyway.
Yeah. So we're talking about, like, I guess, not that there are many drawbacks of an ecosystem which is ultimately driven by, hobbyists and then people that become professionals over a period of time. But I guess that's part of it, isn't it? It's like you've got to then develop the technology yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so the guy in France I was telling you about yesterday, who makes these frames by himself, that frame right there he's working on right now, which is called an X class. Those are the frames that are 12-inch, 15-inch, which are capable of carrying a cinema camera. So
like a proper cinema camera, like what we're talking about here, like what sort of payload, like 5K?
We're talking about from 1.5 kilograms to 2.5, 3 kilograms.
Okay, so with a lens, I'm not sure off the top of my head what that is, but that's a reasonable amount of weight. Yeah.
It's with big motors, so it'll be fine.
We're still talking about sort of, not necessarily huge cameras, but we're still talking about sort of digital SLR sort of styles.
Yeah. Use like Blackmagics, GH5s, that kind of stuff.
Lens control, that sort of stuff. Is that happening yet? Obviously, I guess
it's still manual.
Interesting. But of course, drones and like the different, you can fly like an Alta with an Alta 8 or something with like a decent payload on it, and you can put motors and things for lens control, iris control.
Yeah, actually, I think you could do that.
I guess that'd be my main issue. Is like if you're going to get shallower depth of field and obviously control of that situation, short of setting it to infinity and sort of sending it, I guess that's the kind of question, isn't it?
Yeah, you'd have to keep testing it, because obviously with each module comes more weight.
Of course, and that's battery as well, power, right? Because you've got to power the modules, right?
That's more battery power, it's more weight, and it's more torque it's more pressure on the motors. So you'd have to test them, and then obviously with more pressure on the motors, you'd have to test about the smoothness, because with more stress on the motors, it's not going to be as smooth. It's going to have to keep working harder.
So you've basically got to be an engineer as well in this regard. Is that what I'm hearing?
There's a lot of work. There's a lot of testing that goes into frames, and there's a few companies out there who don't get enough credit with how much work goes into a frame to make it as good as possible.
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting as well. That so we talked about a bit about the tuning of that element as well. So like, I'm understanding that once you've got the new weight limit, say we've theoretically we've got a heavier camera with more modules and more power, then you've got to tune it as well. What's actually involved in that process? I have no idea.
So tuning is a very complex process with drones. It's kind of a bit like code, where you have 3 settings. You have P, you have I, you have D, and they're all like they're done in them. They merge themselves in one, and you have to tune each one in particular. Yet they still work alongside each other in the drone. It's very complex. I don't still get it myself.
This is with the aim of stability, yeah.
That's it. Aim of stability, and how agile, how smooth, how far, not how fast, that's dependent on the camera. But the whole of the PID tuning process is really dependent on how well it flies.
What I'm also hearing now is an argument for me to buy something that's way simpler.
Yeah, well, you can buy frames and drones that are ready to fly, which have been tuned by the company, but they don't feel right when you fly. So
limitations wise, I mean, to be fair, I say it's not a fair comparison, but I did try putting my Mavic 2 Pro into FPV mode and watch it sort of start stuff like that. And I was like, oh yeah, well, no, it's just
didn't work.
Well,
I haven't seen that.
It's not the same.
Not the same.
When we're considering the fact that yours can do like the proper pitches and send it down, it's just nowhere near the same. That's why I started thinking, okay, is there sort of like a next step up? But I'm understanding now, again, to respect the learning curve of this craft.
It's a big learning curve.
Yeah, if you're going to get into it, certainly take it seriously.
So the other thing that people don't really get or they underestimate with FPV is the batteries. Obviously, batteries, they only last 3-4 minutes, whereas Mavic's a half an hour.
So you're not going to get very far away from yourself in 3 or 4 minutes, right?
But that's, it depends on the size of the battery and the weight of the frame. It's still another complex issue, but if you were to just freestyle around a block, you'd get 3-4 minutes easy. But if you're going to go super long range, you'd have to think about how long it takes to get to the place you want to go and how long it takes to get back.
Yeah, and that's got to be trial and error, right? There's no easy thing, because obviously there's stuff like wind you've got to take into consideration as well. That's going to drain the batteries harder.
Yeah, coldness. Like whenever you saw the video I shot in the French Alps, I don't know if you saw that, but
those check it out, definitely go and check out because he's got some amazing stuff in there.
Those batteries, I had to buy a heat warmer the day after I did one shoot, because the batteries only lasted 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes. They lost 50% of their battery life because of the cold.
And what are these are what lithium
polymer.
Lithium polymer. Gotcha.
Yeah, lithium polymer. And they're very volatile. There's a few stories of
these are the scary ones that you can't take on planes, right?
You can take them on planes. You can, but you can only take max 20.
Maximum 20 of them. That seems like a lot to be fair. But now, obviously, all this technology has moved on so much in the last couple of years, right?
It has.
All of the battery technology has been more refined. But I was a little bit scared as well flying yours yesterday when you're like, if it lasts 3 or 4 minutes, and then
that's it. People don't underestimate, Matt. When they fly below a certain threshold, the battery will then start to degrade in health, and it could die. And then, worst comes to worst, it could go up in flames.
Oh, Okay.
Yeah.
So there's just another element of this which definitely required to take it very seriously.
It's crazy. So I had a like a not a racing match, but we had a little freestyle event a few weeks before lockdown, and we were going through poles, through buildings, and a lot of us had our batteries go up in flames because we were hitting the concrete so hard with the drone. The battery will then hit as well, and because of the compression with the battery, they're very flexible. The cells would mush and it would go up in flames.
Okay, what? That sounds terrifying.
Yeah.
At the beginning of this, I was like, right, cool, where are we going? I wanted to get to know FPV. How do I get started and where do I end up? And now I'm like, there's combustible batteries involved.
Yeah, it's mad.
I've heard about people talking about this sort of stuff, but I've never actually like really heard about it. Like someone's like, oh yeah, I didn't discharge that battery or something, and whatever happened.
Yeah.
But now it's like, oh, I'm hearing this totally does happen.
When you send it, like it smells so bad as well when they go up in flames. There's something.
What's the safety procedure here? To be fair, years and years ago when I was like one of the first. I briefly enlightened you on a story yesterday. Actually, we had a few horror stories. There was, I hinted at this level of anxiety at the beginning of the show today.
Yeah.
There's a reason why I definitely sidestepped drones for a very long period of time, and my comfort zone looks like a DJI Mavic Pro 2 because there's a very real reason for that. When we first started filming with drones 5, 6, 7 years ago, I was late to the party already. It was on like my first proper TV commercial. I was like, yeah, I'm so excited. We've got this great guy with us. I won't mention his name because some of this stuff is embarrassing. I know he's past it now. But he'd obviously got this homemade drone, which is great, fantastic. Homemade probably is doing it a disservice. But one of the things he's talking about was like, right, okay, we've got these batteries and also has like a holder for them. Do you have is there a special like a case for it or some like parameter that you have that's like?
Nah, I just put it in a metal bucket and that's it.
Metal bucket. Yeah, so he had like I don't know what it was, like a shielded bag or something, like just in case it did go up. So you should get hold of some of those. But
I will.
I'm not sure I want to go into that story anymore now.
That's the thing. So DJI Mavic batteries, they're so safe, right? They automatically discharge. They never really care. Although they are lithium and polymer, they're very. The thing is that with the drones on the Mavics, they're very slow, and they get used very efficiently.
Right.
Which obviously
this is an important point. Actually, this is a very important point. How fast is your drone? Because I know I roughly understand that mine's about 50 miles an hour or something like that. I don't know.
So mine would go around 60. Cruising speed would be around 35, 45 miles an hour. But if I were to go 60, 70, 80.
80 miles an hour?
Yeah.
Sounds dangerous.
So I think the max world record was, I think, 140 miles an hour, 150 miles an hour.
I can hear all the risk assessors and health and safety advisors just going like, what?
Yeah.
All that stuff. Again, going back to Johnny FPV in the States, I've seen him flying within inches of cars at this sort of speed, which I'm now starting to believe. I was like, there's no way that he's flying as fast as that race car. There's no way.
I know, right? It's crazy.
But now I'm actually starting to comprehend that that's a thing that's totally achievable. But
I think you can definitely do it, but you'd have to really assess how to do it because obviously the battery would burn up incredibly quickly. You'd only get a minute to a minute and a half of flight, and then
so if you're flanking it, the batteries also get used faster as well.
Oh yeah.
Okay, I'm starting to paint a reasonable picture for what's going on in my head.
So actually, if you were to see your maiden flight again, you'd see in the bottom left there'd be a little text saying 200. It would go up by second, and that's your battery amperage.
Okay, I was freaking out every time I saw that because it said low battery.
Oh yeah, that was just a stupid warning.
I love that. It's just a stupid warning, and you didn't tell me that before we took off.
My bad.
So we kind of hinted at the future of this technology, but what I'm hearing is that there's still a strong analog debate. There's a reason why we're sticking with this, and I mean yourself, you've not jumped ship to digital yet.
I've not jumped ship.
Is it a conversation to be had? you know, is it something that does it stick with analog certainly for monitoring purposes? And then
yeah, I mean, it's such a big topic, man, because everyone either wants to save money, or they want to jump ship and get the newest product, or they just want to get the best experience possible without sacrificing the wallet. There's so many different points.
I guess that is a point though, right there, you know, is if analog world, like, I think the biggest take home for me yesterday was I didn't actually realize how much I would enjoy it. I was like,
yeah,
this is a blast. Like, it was stressful, but it was a lot of fun. I can't even think of what it would be really comparable to, but because it's so immersive,
mm-hmm.
You know, the only experience I'd had with like that kind of experience with like physically goggles in your face
Mm-hmm.
Would have been like a driving simulator. I've got a few friends that sort of run different sims and stuff.
Yeah,
and it becomes so immersive that it's just a strange kind of way it takes over your brain, and it was a very unique experience for me.
It's like a simulation, isn't it? You're in a different world when you put the goggles on. At least for me, anyway. Whenever I put the goggles on, it's like a flow state for me. I'm just in a different world now, and I do my thing with the sticks. It's just a shame.
Yeah, I think that again was what struck out to me, is like there's like a point in time where it does take over, but there's real world ramifications. It's a simulation, but that's flying a real thing. You're very, very aware that this is flying through the air, and like obviously, like the cost I had in mind was the fact that it was your drone. It doesn't matter how many times you tell me beforehand. This is like, I don't care about this one. You're gonna crash, so don't worry about it.
Yeah, I get that.
It was like, right, I know I'm allowed to crash. I'm gonna do my best to not crash. And I was really happy that I didn't. But there's no removing yourself from that. There's still an element of stress involved.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But it was like an enjoyable stress, like a focused stress.
There is that stress, an enjoyable stress, until you crash or until you lose a quad, which is the worst feeling in the world. Well, no, I'm sure there's worse feelings, but for me anyway, at that point in time, it was very bad.
Lose a cord? What's that bit?
No, lose a quad. You lose a drone.
Oh, okay, that's what you call it. Sorry,
quad. Yeah, so we say quads.
We'll actually have a look at some of that footage for one of the crashes. Jake, if you wouldn't mind, I know, like, it's important that we reference this. All of our titles for these shows.
Okay, one of my crashes, great. Yeah. Oh, great.
Let's go for the crash.
Oh, this one. This was up in Wales. This is at Rev's Bike Park.
What I'm seeing there is some overexposure for the GoPro and stuff.
That's it. Yeah, man. I had to account for that. Following the bikers. Yeah, it was all quite cool. Through the trees.
I thought that was the crash there. Cool.
There we go. Bonk. Because I didn't see the twig. There's so many thin branches and you can't see any analog feed.
Okay, so this is the argument for digital, yeah? We're talking about the experience being one thing. Like, if you're a hobbyist versus someone that wants to do this professionally, surely a hobbyist is more interested in what they're physically experiencing, like what they're actually seeing, right? So that's got to be, for me, anyway,
but again, it depends on the budget, how much you want to spend, and how better of experience you want this. If you just want as a hobby, you don't want it to go professional, and you want to spend, top tier, then yeah, do digital by all means. And you don't want to go long range, you just want to be close to you, then yeah, go digital. Absolutely. But if you're not looking for that and you want to be with the community, you want to keep building your quad, putting modules in it, there's and it's really hard, man. There's tons of different debates.
It's all good, man. We're not looking for the answers today, man, at all. It's just kind of interesting to sort of have a conversation about it, because
it's really interesting.
So much I've learned in the past, even 24 hours about this sort of stuff that just fascinates me.
Yeah, me as well. But like, it's definitely a system which over the next few months people will be more. There's going to be a big interest in who's going to choose which system, and then probably the next year there'll be a big jump with the analog brands making an HD system.
Interesting.
Because obviously DJI, at the end of the day, DJI made something great. They made an HD system, which into the FPV world was non-existent, and they made it. They did it. So now the brands in the analog world are going to have to compete with that and make a new technology, which is great. That's amazing. We want that. But it's kind of like,
have you had a go on any of that stuff?
DJI is the Apple in the PC world, but
Yeah.
analog is a PC, if that makes sense.
Kind of does.
So Apple is very proprietary. It's closed source, whereas PC, it's not. And that's what analog is.
And there's still a market for both, of course.
Yeah, for sure. So it's very circumstantial. Depends on the person.
You reckon in this situation you'd have not crashed this one if you'd have had the digital ones?
Good point, actually. I think actually you're right. If I were to have digital in those types of woods, then yeah, I wouldn't have crashed.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What's your favorite thing to shoot?
What's my favorite thing to shoot? You know, I have not shot drifting cars yet. I really want to do that.
I knew you were going to talk about drifting cars. I've been trying to talk. No, I try and dissuade the conversation away from drifting cars because everyone wants to talk about them. I'm like, no one wants to talk about cars.
Man, I want to film them so bad.
In FPV world, I can fully understand that.
Yeah,
I guess there's something else about it as well. Like having seen your stuff with the freestyle skiers, obviously it blows my mind that this person's doing a backflip and you're flying around their proximity.
Yeah.
I just cannot get my head around it, especially after trying it yesterday. Knowing full well there's so much to learn about it. I wouldn't want to go anywhere near people with it.
You definitely have to say to them beforehand, like, is it okay I get close to you in the drone? And they're like, yeah, it's fine. Go as close as you want. We just can't hit them.
How do they feel about it though?
They're fine. They're in their zone. They want to do their flips. They want to do their tricks, and I'm in my zone.
I suppose at least if you're chasing a drift car or a race car or something, then there's a roll cage and a helmet around them.
Exactly.
Is that something? Is that something that have you got an avenue for that? Is there a way that you can get involved with that sort of stuff?
Not at this moment in time. I haven't really got any.
I only know that because obviously, like, a bunch of racetracks certainly have been really stringent with us, with like regulations of drones and things.
Yeah, there are lots of regs. So I actually live near a place called Brands Hatch. I've been in talks with them, but they have got a ton of regulations with drones and the proximity to the cars, the proximity to the audience.
Well,
there's a big talk about it, but it's definitely on the list because it's something new to them. It's a new angle.
They're helping you out. You know what I mean, though? Like, are they being helpful with the conversation? Because it's one thing, the technology moving forward, but everyone has to help one another out. It's not as simple as just going, oh, that's too dangerous, we shouldn't be doing it. That's
they're helpful, but I think obviously there's just a few kinks to work out in terms of regs with the whole area involved, audience included, the people behind the cars, the people who do the fixing, all that kind of stuff.
Anywhere you've got, and like, is there like a dream list of places you want to shoot? Because one of the things that I found out about this yesterday was like, it's one thing learning to do it, but the other thing was like the challenge side of it. But I realized like this also opens up a whole realm of possibilities in terms of like places you can shoot. Is there like places you want to go when you can, obviously?
When I can. I really want to go to Turkey, Slovenia, and Hawaii to shoot. What else? Oh, Namibia as well.
Oh yeah.
Well, only because of the sand dunes and the what's it called? All these shipwrecks.
Okay. You got any plans? I mean, I feel like you're being coy now.
No plans yet. I'm just gonna wait until I can go safely. Have
you started looking into it? Like, what's the deal? Obviously, we started seeing regulations coming out about filming safely and things, and obviously we were able to do that yesterday. But
it's more like in terms of hospitality as well, because I know hotels aren't open, and I don't really know where I'm going to stay if I go out. I don't mind going tomorrow, but I just know there's nowhere to stay.
That's what I'm saying. Have you started looking into any of these things yet?
I started looking into Italy in the Dolomites.
Right.
That's looking good, which I should be going pretty soon.
Okay, man.
It's just a bit of a hit and miss with the hotels there and there right now.
That client thing, or is that something you're doing off your own back?
No, off my own back for now.
That's another thing as well. It's like, how much work is there with this? Like, for me, it's comparatively new in terms of the industry side of things. But like, is there a market for it?
Yeah, it's definitely picking up. I mean, as we spoke yesterday, real estate is a big one right now. with FPV. Real estate, yeah.
Using American stuff with me now. Houses.
Yeah. Like just property as well. Property in general with FPV, because it's so dynamic, and also you can get it in one shot. You can get everything in one shot simultaneously and very dynamically.
Oh, I saw what did I see? The Mercedes thing. They did a factory tour, did they?
That's it. Yeah.
Like really recent, maybe a week or two ago, right? I might be my passing of time being.
Yeah, I remember that.
But it was a couple of weeks ago, right?
They
did like that was the FPV drone, right?
Yeah.
That's saying something though. If they're letting it fly around a museum,
Mercedes, yeah.
Priceless vehicles.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not as like the less priceless than Mercedes than anyone else, but
yeah, I mean, I'm sure there'll be regulations in there as well, but they figured it out and they did it, which is pretty cool.
What's your ambitions with this sort of stuff? Did you when you first started it, was it always professional or?
No. When I first started, I just thought, okay, let's just see if this will go, because I had the Phantom. I flew that for 2-3 years, and at that point I got a bit bored and just thought, okay, let's try something else. And then at that point, when I was thinking I was getting bored, I saw Johnny's videos and Mr. Steele videos, and I thought, let's just do this. Let's buy a little drone kit. I think I got the Tyro 99 that cost £70 from a Chinese company, and it took me a month to build.
Right.
So it was crazy. So it took me a month to build, and then when I tried to get it up in the air for the first time, it wouldn't go up. It would just grind the ground. It would flip over and just start grinding the ground. It happened for 2 days straight. I didn't know what was up. So I asked my friend, what's up with this? I showed him a video of it, and he said, have you got the props the right around? And I have no idea about props. I just thought, just slack a pair of props on and that's it. It's fine. I didn't realize that you have to have props on parallel diagonally. I just had one prop in each four, and that's why. And then when I figured that out, I got up in the air. I had a good flight, and then the second flight I did, I lost it. It's never found again. It's somewhere around me right now. Yeah.
That was the other side of things as well. It's like, I guess there's so much in this world of trying to work out the learning curve of it, trying to work out how to do it and stuff. But the other thing is the landing. It's like when I want to land a conventional drone, I'm very lucky that I have a GPS drone. So I just go land. And it's like, are you happy you're in a safe zone to land? I was like, yes, land. How do you land an FPV drone?
It's real hard, man. I mean, as yesterday, I had to take control over you to land it, right?
I love that you threw that out there. We were going to skate over that one. We were going to let everyone believe that I'd have a maiden voyage.
Oh, it was a perfect flight.
Crash.
No, so when I first started flying, it was so hard to learn to land as well. Because in the simulator, I thought just crashing would be fine. I was so bad at the simulator. It took me hours. And then when I started to fly in real life, I crashed pretty hard the first few times when I tried to land. Definitely bent a few props. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah, I was pretty surprised when you were like, oh, I'm not very good at landing yet. I was just like, what do you mean? You managed to get it on the ground without it destroying itself. Surely that's a plus.
Yeah, no, it's definitely hit and miss with the drone, because obviously when the camera angle is so high, you have to level it out to see where the ground is. And then obviously when you level it out, the drone goes forward.
Right.
So it's like a bit of a calculation.
So you have to level it out first and then kind of turn the power off, or what?
Yeah, because the camera angle is that high, right?
All right, gotcha.
So if you're looking at when you're going to land, you want to see where to land and where the ground is in proximity to you.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to be in parallel, you have to go forward a bit, stop, go forward a bit, stop. And obviously if you misjudge that, you'll just go straight into whatever you're heading into.
No, it sounds so complicated. I guess the simulator helps with this.
It does help. Right? Definitely helps, yeah.
Spotting the landings and stuff. I mean, the funny thing though about that simulator is whilst it was very, very beneficial to make sure that my muscle memory was doing the right things, as we said, one controller is doing the acceleration. So the physical speed of it, which then ultimately gives it lift. Mm-hmm. But then you've got the roll, pitch, and yaw.
Throttle. So throttle and yaw on the left stick.
Yeah.
pitch and roll or on the right stick.
Yeah, and you've got to compensate between those things. So that element was super helpful. But then beyond that, it was like, all right, cool. Now it's still a computer game to me. I'm still like not taking it particularly seriously.
Yeah, but
like,
hey, look, it was your first go.
Oh, of course.
I'm sure if you were to get into it, tunnel vision, you'd get there.
Yeah, and it's just that landing bit was like, how do we even comprehend this?
Yeah, it's hard.
Go, here's it back.
it takes time for sure.
Where, for me, the reason why I wanted to bring this in again is because of the fact that it's like we've had different versions of technology find their way into, I want to say, cinema world, feature film world. Is this something that you think is going to be seen within that environment?
I think for sure. In the next few years, we'll see a rise in shots with FPV, with cinema cameras, definitely.
I mean, like actually in film world, like, is there something that's holding that back, or is it already happening? We don't even know about it.
I mean, we never know under NDA, but I mean,
can't say stuff like that because then I'm like, oh, he's under non-disclosure.
I mean, like, I know I'm not for sure right now. I'm sure other people are.
Oh, you would say that though.
No, okay. So from my personal view, there's not enough there's not enough trial and error in the market right now for pure cinema FPV. I think give it another year or two, because as I said, the decline in GoPros and the rise in cinema films on the frames right now is happening just now.
And it's telling us that there's a demand for that footage, right?
There's a demand.
Where's that demand coming from? Is it coming from clients? Is it coming from people that are like, I want to get my shots better? Like, where's that coming from? Like,
it's from both. It's from both angles. It's from the cinema companies. It's coming from pilots who also just want to better themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Like even myself, I'm flying GoPros, and now I want to build a frame that carries a GH5.
But and motivation from your perspective, I presume, being visual. You want to get the best images possible, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. GoPros just can't give all that.
Yeah, I'm aware. We'll figure that out.
See, it's definitely it's an event which will happen soon, and I'm sure you'll see the footage of FPV cinema cameras coming out in the next few years for sure.
Well, from my perspective, I hope that you're at the forefront of that.
We'll see.
Honestly, the reality is I'm talking to you because, was blown away by your footage, not just FPV footage. So it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show and have this conversation with people. By the way, just reminding them, if you have any questions for either of us, then just chime away. I understand that a lot of this is incredibly technical, certainly from my perspective, but I'm trying to break things down. Like, right, Louis, let's slow down a little bit. But we've gone through a million different rafts of it.
I whiz through a lot just because I know all the complex bits about analog, but I have to simplify it for people who don't know FPV because it's
like myself, mate.
Yeah, it's a challenge for me.
The take home for me is that's a really positive thing, because at the end of the day, it reminds us to take these things seriously. And the reality is, even the things I was talking about earlier, gimbals and just drone shots in general, all of this technology is amazing and wonderful that it's finding its way into a more accessible, realm. There's ways we can go and get ourselves a handheld gimbal, and suddenly we've got a Steadicam shot. But as you said earlier, needs to be motivated. But it's a wonderful thing that this technology is finding its way in through, because it gives people the ability to practice with these things where previously they weren't able to. And I guess that's why I wanted to talk about FPV today, and obviously have someone like yourself who's, I would say, leading the charge. Mate, seriously, I regard you as highly as likes of the Johnny FPVs and that of the world, because it's not simply just it's not just simply the skill set required, but it's spotting a shot, having the awareness to actually go, there's a purpose to this. That's what's going to move this forward and get it taken seriously in feature film world. I don't like to say take it seriously, because the reality is, it certainly is, as far as my mind's concerned. There's room for this style of shooting in all places.
There is definitely room, and I hope it happens.
In my head, it's like, all right, what's the application for these shots?
Yeah.
How do you think about it in that way? That's another really important question. Is like, do you think about it in terms of shots, or is it just kind of like a freestyle thing?
It really depends on the location. There's definitely times when you go to a location and you just play around for the first few times. So as I said, you bring 20 batteries, let's say, to a location.
Yeah.
You use 5 of them as a kind of like a taster. You get to know the place, and then the next 5 or 10, you make lines for your content.
So like, have you got to remind yourself every time? Do you need to like? Is there a bit of like getting your eye in every time you turn the thing on? Is it just kind of like my brain's in FPV mode now?
No, there's definitely some adjusting to the location, because every location is different. There's definitely places where you fly and there's an angle that you want to get. There's a gap you want to hit. There's something you want to fly past extremely fast, and you can't get all of them in one, like in the first shot. So you have to practice each go, and then when you get used to the location, you make the shot all in one.
Yeah, because I think that's, again, then the next bit that fascinates me is where that application is. Obviously, we talk technologically about it. We can talk about the fact that we get manual control over, bigger and better cameras, and we start taking bigger payloads. But certainly from the next side of things, it's like, okay, cool. Well, then if I'm going to direct you, that's one thing we foolishly didn't try yesterday. What I should have done is been like, right, Louis, I want to see this. That's my start and end frame. How hard is that? It's not only there's a skill set within there, but that's one of the things that attracted me to your filming. It certainly had that quality to it. It was, you'd thought about what you were filming and subsequently delivered it. It's like, all right, cool. I'm getting if it's the wide establisher, and then the tight close up, and it's dynamic, and I'm just in. It's not jarring. I'm not being removed from the shot. Where so many things, it might, of course, again, technically, you think of something. The most jarring thing I can see is an auto exposure or a white balance change or something like that. Those are the things that are immediately removing me from the experience. But certainly when I get down to it next, it's like, okay, does the shot work?
Yeah.
And that's why I'm like, like Louis stuff. It's like, yeah, cool. It's just got it. The eye's happening and it's making sense and it's following that bit. Yeah. But I guess if I'm on a set and there's different pressures and regards, I've got, what's your working practices? Are you in that position where you've got to go, right, actually, Louis, I need you to get the shot first time? Or do you need to tell me, actually, you know what, I need a rehearsal?
Yeah, that's it. So more often than not, when you get the shot, the perfect shot, there's 10 before that are crap. So it's definitely hit and miss. There is the rare chance that it's a hole in one. But it's not that often.
Okay, so we're seeing this is your next step, is just honing it and increasing the success rate.
Yeah. But then again, it's the locations are so different all the time. It's hard to do it all in one.
We're starting to understand what a talent Johnny has now, right?
But then again, I mean, Johnny, how many times do we know he's done a flight all in one?
I don't know. I seen him at Formula Drift in America though, and I see him go next to the cars, and he might have been there the day before though, to be fair. I don't know. He might have been like,
but then again, he has flown cars a lot. Like that's his specialty, I think, isn't it?
I suppose then it's variables, isn't it? Like if you understand what you're working with, you're talking about a new location. It's not only the physical structure, but if you're dealing with a racetrack and a car, well, that car's only going to do one of a number of things. Once you've learned those variables, I guess it's kind of dialed in. Whereas if you're going to a location, I mean, again, we cited one yesterday, you were flying in and out of, like, how big was the gap? His feet.
Yeah, it was like a meter.
Yeah, like at what point does the physical drone size like impact? Like, it's like that's as far as you can go in. It's like
yeah, that's because I went there before, so I knew the rounds and I knew what to do. Whereas I doubt if that was my first time, like I would have maybe done it, but it would have been hard. I may have crashed.
Okay, so I'm starting to get there. I'm starting to understand, like, that's how you start to implement this in a cinematic workflow where you've got a shot list, is rehearsal.
Yeah, for sure. And that's also the thing, like the thing with digital and analog is you can have monitors for each to give to the director. You can have a separate monitor, which you could then look into their feed. They could look into your feed of the goggles. which digital you can have. Obviously, it would be better for the director if it was HD. But you can still have it in analog.
Yeah, and we're starting to get into it now. I'm now out of the brain of like enamored and enthusiastic with MPV, and now I'm like, right, okay, now we need to think about how this actually works practically. But that makes perfect sense. Of course, not only does the analog then have different drawbacks, because obviously as a director, if I'm looking through that monitor, I want to see what's in the frame.
Exactly.
I don't want to just see like a broken up signal necessarily. I want to see, right, what is in my frame, what's out of my frame, because we don't want to get to the edit and be like, oh, well, there's a person there.
Yeah.
Or there's like an extra or a prop or something in the way.
Yeah. So digital in that sense, it would win, because obviously you get the most clear image and you'd see what's what and what's where.
It's so interesting. So many different elements to it.
Yeah. But I mean, as I said, DJI is paving the way for HD, and hopefully with the next few months or years, the analog brands will make an HD system which isn't closed source.
What's the DJI, the top stuff right now? I see they got some goggles. What is it?
They have the goggles, and they have the air unit, which you then put into the drone. That's the whole system. I think that's right now 650 pounds, 700 pounds for the goggles.
That's like a package, is it?
So yeah, the package of the headset, the air unit which you put into the drone, and also the controller.
Air unit that you put into the drone. What does that mean? Sorry.
So the air unit is the actual HD system itself. It's like
the transmitter.
The transmitter, yeah, that's it. That's the DJI system.
I'm understanding it. I'm connected.
That's what makes the HD clear.
Right. Okay. So that's like, okay. I'm starting to understand where we're going with this now.
But I mean, obviously, inherently DJI system will do more work because it's a cleaner image, it's heavier, it's bigger. So you have to bear in mind that with a bigger system, you have to have a different drone. You can't just slap a DJI HD system onto this drone, because it's not made for it. It's too big. So then the next question comes in: do we have to build a new frame? New brands will come up with building the same frame.
But it's good to know that there's a market for this. So we are starting to see that development.
Yeah, for sure.
These things are trickling down. There's money going into it, which means that these things are being developed. So obviously the community is incredible, as we've heard so far, which means these things are getting picked up. And
it's amazing, and it's good. Like DJI is done well to make this. It definitely has. I'm giving credit to them, but it definitely has its limitations. I don't know what their intentions are with this, because actually right now DJI have a discount on their whole FPV system. I don't know what their intentions are, if they want to try and lock into this FPV world.
Well, like I said, I'm picking my way through this mentally and going like, what are the limitations? What are the things that hold it back from different things? And so far we've discovered it's technologically, it's like physical weight, battery life, all these things. But then ultimately it's also regulations. At a certain point in time, I mean, you said that your ops manual didn't even have proper guidelines to FPV. You didn't learn that on your training, right?
No, we didn't. No. So it's a weird thing. But just to go back with the digital, is a con of why digital isn't great is because it's closed source and it's proprietary, which means if the country doesn't want the power output of that drone to be above 25 milliwatts, that means that the signal of the video is 25 milliwatts, which is tiny. It's like minuscule, which means you'd only get 200 meters out and you'll lose video signal.
Right. Okay. And obviously in the world, we understand it's bad.
Yeah. So if the country were to lock its milliwatt amperage of 25, then DJI would have to be 25 forever, and you'd only get 200 meters out. That's it. You can never go above. Whereas analog, you can go up to 800 milliwatts. You can go up to 1 milliwatt. I mean, 1 watt. I'm not too sure. And it could go on for miles.
Right. So that's the thing. There's so many different parts of the industry and regulation world that are like actually keeping this thing, locked up.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just thinking in terms of production. If you're taking on a pro shoot, you've got to have insurance. So obviously that person. I mean, we've got Bryn and Andy Harris on previous episodes where we talk about like the production limitations. Like a producer then has to evaluate a risk assessment in coordination with health and safety supervisor, for making sure these things work. It's one thing you actually having skill set and all that sort of stuff, but the reality is you've got to have, you've got to submit your ops manual, which says I'm qualified to fly this thing, payload and style of drone as well. So like, obviously positive that the likes of brands had to look in to help you out and understand how they can utilize yourself and your services, not only so you can learn to fly next to cars and stuff, but certainly so that they can open their doors up for film shoots where FPV can actually be brought onto the set.
Yeah, exactly. There's definitely applications out there that could be used very wisely, and there's more applications that could be used that people don't know about.
Oh yeah, we talked about Secret Service earlier. I'm pretty sure that's where all this technology is really trickling down from.
Who knows? Who knows?
Oh, good man. Well, I'll open up to Q&A again one more time before we close this out with Lou today. It's been an absolute great sport. But if anyone's got any questions for us before we close this out, then do chime in, guys, because the reality is we're hopefully here to bring you guys some information and be here to serve you guys to a certain degree. If you've got questions about whatever we're talking about, then feel free to get involved, because it's one thing us having a conversation about things, but we're certainly only talking about things we're interested in.
Yeah. I'm gonna get you the next FPV pilot, Josh.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
I tell you seriously, it's one of those things. I really was like blown away by the experience. I keep saying that, but that is the right explanation. That is the right adjective. It's just like I couldn't get over that immersive experience, but it's real. It's not like playing a video game. I don't care for video games too much because of that. I certainly like the idea of video games, but I suck at them too. So I understand it. If I'm going to get good at, probably me with everything, if I'm honest with you, if I want to do something, I've got to be good at it, or I've got to at least see the learning curve within it. I remember, jumping on, oh man, this is embarrassing. I jumped on Call of Duty like years ago with my little brother, and he's like, give it a go. And seriously, dead. Instantly. Respawn, dead. Straight away. I'm just like, man, this is not fun. Good. This is not enjoyable for me. I'm not getting better. Whereas jumping on with the FPV stuff, and it's like goggles, and then suddenly it is immersive and it's rewarding. It's like, I liken it to action sports. I liken it to extreme sports in that regard. It felt like I was doing something because it's real. This drone is flying around. I'm in control of where it lands up, and there's consequences. Like there's real world consequences attached to it. So it's just like, But that's honestly, crazy, before yesterday, I like the idea of it, but I probably wouldn't have been. I wasn't. I didn't have my Amazon wish list or whatever with little bits of parts. I wasn't calling up CVP going, can I have that DJI situation, please? Can I have that, that ready to go kit? I wasn't looking at different parts,
Yeah.
So, but after yesterday, obviously the conversation is like, well, how much is that DJI little package to put together? I'm
it rolls up.
Leaning forward on my chair, listening.
Yeah, it's definitely a big investment, and it's something that you should try and research before you jump or ship. Which is why it's like, as a beginner, and I would recommend you get a simulator and a controller first, and then if it's something that's not for you, you sell the controller.
That's weird though, because honestly, if I'd have had the simulator, I wouldn't have done it. If I'd have just jumped on the simulator first, I'd have been like, I can't, I'm interested. Like one of our junior editors here, he works, and he does the simulator. And he's like, you want to go? I wasn't interested. Jumping on it wasn't, couldn't quite connect the dots. But I think that's probably the same with the driving side of it. When I drive on the driving simulator, I understand the premise and it's fun. Driving slightly differently because you've got a steering wheel and you've got a gearbox, and that sort of stuff. Whereas with that, it was like, I'm just in control of something that's in a virtual environment. At least with the driving, like on a racing sim, it was a bit easier for me to connect the dots. Whereas on the flying sim, FPV sim, without the physical immersive experience, I guess it was that one step removed.
Gotcha.
So it was probably more to do with the consequences. I found it enjoyable.
So do you reckon that if you had not done this simulator and you'd have just literally gone all in with the maiden voyage, do you reckon you would have had a more crazy experience?
I definitely needed the simulator.
Yeah.
For sure. Because I kept doing the wrong thing. I was like, right, it wants to go forwards, or sorry, the angle's too different, so I'll pitch it differently. But I would naturally do the opposite on the right stick, and it kept doing the wrong thing on the simulator.
Yeah.
It was only when I had trained that, you know, it was not trained, but like only done 10 minutes of that. I was like, wrong.
Yeah.
And then it was like, okay, I just need to do that opposite, and then the rest of the things are slow enough that I can figure it out, because it was those small inputs that you mentioned, and that advice was, you know, definitely invaluable. You know, without you being there, I'd have just freaked out. I'd never bothered.
You did it, man. You did it. I'm so proud of you.
I appreciate it. That certainly means a lot to me, Louis. Look, man, you've been a great guest today, and I appreciate, hopefully the audience have managed to pick through the technical stuff with the stuff that I've done my best.
Yeah, I'm sorry if it was too complicated.
Don't be silly. I mean, to twist your arm, to make you, put your money where your mouth is. If someone is going to go and get into it right now, they've got your simulator, what's the first thing they get? Is it best to start with digital because that's where it's going? Or is it best to start with an analog thing and then work their way up? Just, what's your recommendation?
I would say personally, go analog for now.
Right, okay.
And buy mid-range to premium range, because you're going to get reliable parts.
Right.
You're going to get good parts which can withhold a crash, because you will crash without a doubt. And you know that the community will stand behind you if you do have a problem that you can't fix.
Yeah.
I think that's the way to go, because then, as I said, as DJI is paving the way, the analog brands, they will bring out an HD system. I mean, a few months ago, the Fat Shark, the main goggle brand, which is called Fat Shark, they brought out an HD system called Bifrost, and it's not on par with DJI. It's not like amazing, but at least they tried, and they're now revising it again. They're taking compliments. I mean, they're taking constructive criticism from the community to make a version 2.
They got an R&D department in front of them. Listen to them, of course. Makes perfect sense, right?
Exactly.
Huh. I still can't get over the fact that my brain still wants to get like the easiest thing. Like from my perspective, it's just like out of the box, get up and go.
Yeah.
Everything you showed me yesterday was amazing, but as soon as I start, this is just me, full stop. It's like when it comes to cameras, codecs, tech, blah blah blah, I'm like all in. I'm obsessive about it. But when it came to that, I was like, this is so far away from where my brain is. Like, it would just need to be like broken down into a very, very easy to follow kind of.
No, for sure. It's really it's quite cool as well, because when you know how difficult it is and you start from A, you now, let's say you've progressed a few months and you've now done a great line. It's amazing to look back at how far you've come, especially if you've built a drone yourself without buying a ready-to-fly one.
I can see that being very satisfying. Yeah. I'm definitely saying that when it comes down to the tricks you're doing of flying close proximity to objects and things, like again at the Grain Tower yesterday, it was like, all right, this is like an aperture of a few feet and you're flying through it. That's pretty far away from where I'm at. I'm going to be precious about my first drone, let's call it, for now.
Yeah, man. Well, but, I mean, I'm a year and a half, 2 years into it now. So
we'll see. I might just give you a call and hassle you about going to film. We might have you back on at some point. We'll see. But Louis, mate, thank you very much, seriously, for giving us your time today and giving us the audience your time as well.
No worries, man.
For those that are listening, thank you very much for tuning in. CVP, thank you very much for having us. It's an absolute pleasure to have this platform to be able to communicate with an audience. We've got loads of things going on in the not too distant future. We're continuing the theme of opening up our conversation to different parts of the film industry, and that might be just different roles on set. We've had people like Danny Winship, who's a prop storeman on Guy Ritchie's movies, and they had wonderful stories to tell. And we've already had senior colorist at Envy, Jax Harney, talking to us about very technical stuff as well. So we kind of are trying to get across the board these types of guests. So if anyone's got suggestions of anything they want to hear or see, feel free to get in touch with CVP as well, because we're all ears. We're here for you guys at the end of the day. So it'd be great to bring on some guests that you guys want to hear from. But I've got to bring on a director of photography next, I think, because we've been slacking there. But mate, thank you again, Louis.
No, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again. And same time next week, 4 p.m. on CVP's YouTube channel. We'll be on audio platforms very soon as well. I can't tell you when, but very, very soon. Check out CVP's Instagram and YouTube and stuff, social media platforms, and information will be with you guys real soon. Anyway, that's enough from us. Louis, pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Take care, guys. Until next time.